Today, we're talking to David Nelson. David Nelson is a serial entrepreneur, and he's also the founder of FoundersForge, based in the Tri-Cities, and he helps many entrepreneurs on their journey. So thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's always enjoy talking to you every chance I get.
Yeah, so David and I actually met in the heat of COVID. I was back in the Tri-Cities working, and David and I were 2 spots away from each other in a co-working space. So I've gotten to see him work with many different people, and he's definitely a good one. David, why don't you share a little bit about the moment that you decided to be an entrepreneur and what your first step looked like?
Yeah, I think really, I don't know if I ever decided to be an entrepreneur up front. I was still in college. I was, working on different projects and worked for a lab that would fund me to, go to school. And so I just was, thinking I was headed down the path of being going out getting a normal 9-to-5 job. And my focus was interactive multimedia and gaming. And so I thought I was going into the gaming industry, and like a lot of people do. And as I got more and more into it and friends started going in the industry, I realized, that industry is not as great as everybody thinks it is. It is a hard one to be in. You often get paid less, you work crazy hours. And I just wasn't hearing a lot of good feedback from it. And then there was an opportunity with one of my professors to work on another grant idea. And we decided to build a mobile, basically prove that you could teach on mobile phones. And this is before the iPhone was out. And so we built a little 3D solar explorer saying, hey, there's proof that you can actually do educational content on a phone. Mm-hmm. And we got the grant that led us to sitting back and saying, we could write a book on this. And him saying, why don't we do it? And I just kind of said, okay, sure. Never, really thinking what that would mean. And 3 months later, we wrote a book. And then we sat there after writing the book and said, we really could create a company on this. And I was like, could we? And we sent a proposal to Captain Morgan, the Captain Morgan Spiced Rum. And like 3-4 days later, they called us. Next thing I know, we had a company. So I really fell into it. Not always the best way to do it, but it was a, kind of as soon as I fell into entrepreneurship, I could never see going back. I still can't imagine going and getting a normal 9-to-5 job. And it's been probably one of the greatest adventures of my life so far.
Yeah. I never knew you wrote a book. So
yeah, it was a technical book of mobile 3D game development from start to market. Got picked up a bunch of universities. It was back when people bought technology books and some like computer programming books. But yeah, that was kind of what kickstarted it all. And I never thought I could do it, but then once the option was in front of me, I don't know why I always just tended to say yes. I would just go for it.
Yeah,
going big and trying it. I mean, worst comes worse, you fail and go back to getting a normal job. And it just never seemed like something I shouldn't do.
Yeah. So what's one mistake that you made if you started over in business today that you change, or maybe just one common mistake that you see entrepreneurs making on a regular basis?
I think that ties into kind of how I got started. And that's that there's so many mistakes that you make as a entrepreneur, and especially when you don't really know what you're doing. If any of us truly know what we're doing, we like to think so, right? But the biggest mistake I see that happens over and over again that I've done is that you kind of just charge into it. You think you have an idea that's going to be really big, and you just charge into it and think, I'm just going to do this idea, it's going to be successful, and you just don't make any sort of plan at all. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what we definitely did. We would come up with ideas, we'd charge ahead, we'd try to get traction with them, try to get it to work, but we didn't always have a plan for what we were trying to do. And I think that really hurt us in the long run. And it's something I see a lot of entrepreneurs do today. And it's, it doesn't always have to be a business plan up front, but you still have to have a plan. Just charging ahead, building a product, it's a really, you might get lucky, sure. Everybody hears about the random stories, but at the end of the day, having that plan and strategy and doing your research and truly understanding your customers makes all the difference moving forward. And that's something that, I've started 5 companies, getting ready to start possibly a 6th, and a nonprofit. And the hardest, the one I had to fail 3 times in a row with all different ideas in order to really rethink it and change my approach. So hopefully people will build a plan and not have to do that.
How have you adapted your business or strategic plan in response to unforeseen events or changes in the business landscape?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, we worked with Captain Morgan Spice Rum, and then the 2008 financial crisis hit. And I'd love to say that's exactly why it failed. Just be like, oh, it was just that. But at the end of the day, I think we just didn't know what we were doing enough, and we didn't have a plan from the get-go. So when adversity hit us, we just really didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah. And
so I think then also later on, I was doing a different technology startup, and then the COVID-19 virus hits. And leading up to that, we had a plan, but we also didn't have everything set up that we needed to capitalize on that moment too. And that was a missed opportunity that hurt that startup. And so I think the lesson I've learned over the years is that, you have to have the plan, but you also have to be very adaptable and be ready to make massive changes. Yeah. And the companies that did really well. I can say that even though that one technology startup that I was doing didn't work out, I'd already started the nonprofit that was focused on supporting other small businesses and basically becoming a entrepreneur center and accelerator program. That one took off. I mean, we were set up and we had a plan, we had a strategy, we knew what we were going to do next. And so when that adversity hit us, we just took off, and we had everything set in place to capitalize on it. And that was probably one of the most exciting, times for our business from a nonprofit point of view. And so to me, it's putting the plan in place, but then really, being dynamic, talking to your customers and listening to what they're saying and what opportunities are coming up in front of you, and really focusing on that adaptability piece. No one can see the future, but you can plan for a lot of what ifs and just have a lot of redundancies and backups and your flexibility to change. One of my favorite moments in all of that, and COVID-19 when it hit, not favorite moments, but one of the most ironic moments, I should say, is that Zoom comes out of nowhere. It was just this app some people were using. And you have like Cisco WebEx that's been around forever. Cisco should have just owned the market. They should just dominate it, or Google Meetings should have just dominated. But Zoom took over because they were able to adjust. So when Cisco started saying, hey, you should come, use us for conferencing and virtual meetings, they had a waiting list. It would take 2-3 weeks for them to onboard people. And Zoom's like, just come on, we'll fix the servers. We'll put the money down to make it work. And their adaptability and their ability to move quickly is why almost everybody still uses Zoom today. Yeah,
that's a great example. So this isn't on my list of questions, but I kind of want to dig into like how to prepare to be adaptable. So do you have any tips for entrepreneurs around like preparing to be adaptable and, planning for pivoting and things like that?
It comes down to a couple of different ways. First, it comes down to the team and the people you have, in place. Everyone on your team is looking for, just to do their quick 9-to-5 job and get out the door. And they're not, invested into the business, not necessarily financially, but they just truly believe in the mission and what you're doing. You're going to struggle to be adaptable because they're going to keep looking for their typical routine. So I love hiring people that are adaptable, especially on an early team of a new startup or a small business. And finding those early employees that are in the trenches with you really makes all the difference. The second thing I've noticed is that and I've been guilty of this many times, if you build a business solely around yourself, then you have to have all the ideas. Everybody looks to you for everything. So you've got to have, you have to give ownership up to, really have to give ownership and have people that truly, own the tasks, the responsibilities, have decision-making power, that when you are trying to figure out what to do next, people feel they have a say. And so when, COVID-19 hits and our nonprofit's wondering if we're going to get funding. I mean, we literally announced that we were going to be a nonprofit and we were starting our fundraising journey. We packed like 80 people into a small little space, announced, we exist now. This is great. We're going to be doing some fundraising. Can't wait to talk to all of you. And like the next week, or the week after, the shutdowns happened.
Wow.
So we weren't sure about funding. We weren't sure about anything. But instead of me having to try to figure out what was next, we had board members and our first kind of early employees that were going to be joining us, the people that helped build this and form it. They were already talking to the city. They were talking to funders. We really reached out to the business community, and we just moved forward. And even though we had to work remotely and work differently, it wasn't just, David, what are we going to do?
Right.
And so planning for adaptability to me is planning for good business. It's having stakeholders at the table, even employees. Not, I think people get caught up in a stakeholder has to have financial compensation from a equity point of view, but it's just those types of people that you hire that care so much about what they do in the business that they're right in the trenches with you. They look to you for whatever that you can provide them, but when in doubt, they will move forward and keep the company going, even if you're gone for a while. And then those are the type of people you have to have on your team and have them in leadership roles for you to be adaptable to start with.
That's great insight. So could you share the key elements of your business plan or the style of business plan that you recommend to entrepreneurs you work with and how it has evolved over time?
Yeah. And I'm very opinionated on business plans. So it's, which I think is okay. But I think my first statement to people is that if you're just starting out, you're just getting going, it's really hard to start with a business plan. It's, unless you're a small business that's going out to get a loan, sometimes you just have to crank out a business plan, do the best you can, and hope you get the loan. Like, you want to get as much help and support to do that. But before you even get there, it's real important to validate your ideas and decide what's going to work. And business plans are great if you're writing them around a business that is going to work, or you have a lot of validation that it's going to. But before you get there, there's a tool called the the value proposition canvas. We always call it VPC, but the value proposition canvas and the business model canvas. And the value prop canvas is really about your customers and how do you align your ideas with the customers, and what do you give them, and what do they receive. And it's really focused on your customers' feelings, which is when you put yourself in their shoes, or better, you go and talk to them and get their feedback. You can then start testing ideas. You can say, my products feature 1, 2, and 3, or my offering 1, 2, and 3 solves my customers, pain 1, 2, and 3. But instead of just lining them up and saying, poof, it works, you can actually start tracking that and see if it does. And do more customer interviews on that. And then the business model canvas can be used to be that first version of a business plan. It's making you list out your suppliers, making you list out your the value you offer people, how you make money, what are your costs, and it's all on one sheet of paper, or I like doing it on a PowerPoint so I can move things around. But it lets you outline everything, and it's a lot more dynamic than a business plan. Instead of writing a 90-page document up front, as you're getting going and you're proving, does this business idea work, you can track it dynamically. And then when it comes time to get funding, or you need that business plan, or you're moving forward enough that you need that greater vision, then you can dive in, and hopefully by then you have a couple of people on your team that can also contribute. And so that business plan part, becomes way stronger by having those initial planning documents.
The whole point of this series is really to kind of educate people on the fact that business plans are not just like some document you write as a startup and stick on a shelf, but that having a business plan, whether it's a written document and that's how you process information, or it's a Canvas document like you were just sharing, whatever form the business plan needs to come in to be helpful and applicable for you as a business. And then in our annual strategic planning, we keep it updated, and we really do engage with that business plan on a regular basis. So that's kind of our overall
that makes sense. And I think it's real important too, because what typically happens is that, I'm a small business, or I'm going to go out and get a loan or financing, and they request a business plan. So I sit down that night and hammer out 90 pages the best I can, making a lot of guesswork on it. And then I just set it on the shelf, or, it just stays as a PDF in my folder, and I look at it 20 years later and laugh about it because of how wrong it was.
Yep.
And I think that nobody's going to get it right on day one. And I've learned that if you like the idea of a business plan, do it, write it down, but do exactly what you're saying. It's got to be part of what you do it's got to be something you can constantly refer to.
Yeah, living document.
That's, yeah, a true living document. And if that doesn't work, start with something smaller that builds up into this bigger living document that you can reference. I mean, even with the if you Google business model canvas or value prop canvas, I mean, they really are the different aspects of a business plan. They're just smaller up front, and you can print those out. You can write them. You can do whiteboard versions of them, the PowerPoint versions of it, and you can kind of have that up. And one of my last startups, we posted it on the wall and we referenced it all the time.
Yeah.
And I think it's, people get caught up in the, all the different aspects individually, but it's really what you refer back to. And then my favorite thing is when you actually are up and running, your business is going well, and you look back at it a year later and you look, okay, what were my financial projections compared then to now? Am I even close? And if you're not, that's okay. But then year 2 to year 3, you have your first year's financials. You can actually see, are we doing better or are we doing worse than we did the first year? And I can compare that to what I projected it to be and see, am I even headed in that direction? I mean, I think we're all very we always think it's going to go better than it does. We're always very opportunistic. We think, oh yeah, we're just going to kill it, and it usually is harder than we all think. But you might have had some good intuition moving forward, and by having the documents that share that, and treating them as live documents, do you actually know where you're headed and what's going on?
Yeah. Okay. So being the marketing nerd that I am, I couldn't pass up an opportunity to pull branding and messaging marketing into this conversation. So what role has branding and messaging played in your success as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think that there's a big misconception for businesses, and that is that building a product or getting the company like off the ground is the hardest part. And small businesses, they think of, oh, I got to figure out where the store is going to be, what's my inventory going to be, what products am I going to sell, or if you're making something, I'm going to make this cupcake or something that's going to be great. On the tech side, people are building apps and services and websites, and they're so focused on that, and it can be really hard to get all that figured out, and it is a really hard thing to do. But the thing I've learned is that with time and money, the product and offering is easy. I mean, even if you're trying to cure cancer, I would argue that we just haven't put enough time and money into it for it to be solved. But other than those crazy hard things to do, if you're building an app or service, just time and money, and you're gonna have a product.
Right.
But the product is the easy part. I compare it to climbing like Mount Everest. You build your product, you release it, you just got to base camp 1. You have the rest of the way to go to hit the summit. Now it looks like you're at the summit sometimes, and you find out you still have all this way to go, but the hardest thing to do is to focus on the business side, focus on the sales side, focus on the customer relationship side. And to me, a lot of that all is focused on around the branding side, and who is the company? What does the company believe in? Because it's really hard to motivate people to climb a mountain, especially when they don't even necessarily know it's a huge mountain to climb, if they don't know why they're doing it.
Right.
Simon Sinek's, start with why. That gets quoted all the time, but it really does matter. People will join your company, they will buy from you because why you do it, not what you do.
Right.
And I think putting people on that path really makes all the difference. And so focusing on the brand, focusing on the strategy, focusing on the marketing side of it, that's going to make or break your business. The only other thing I'd add is sales, but a lot of that goes hand in hand. And that to me is the crux, because that is one of the hardest things to get right. That's why bringing in a partner, bringing in experts, whether it's training you or hiring them when you can, that makes all the difference. But if that's not your focus, you're just focused on the product, you're really going to struggle to move your company forward, your small business forward. The branding and marketing piece really is probably one of the most important pieces.
Yeah. Okay. Last question here. So what is your biggest piece of advice around business and strategic planning for people in business with big goals in 2024?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, if you want to do big things, one, you have to go big. I think it sounds obvious and maybe it's a little too straightforward, but it's easy to come up with your strategic plan or come up with a vision and not even build it into a plan. And think of it as, oh, we're going to go do this thing. But if you don't write it into a plan, if you don't share that, if you don't turn it into a vision and share it with your team and everybody else, you're never going to get there. It's something that if you wanted to do big things, going big means getting the team together, getting their buy-in, getting them to understand where you're headed, and really doing it as a team with the motivation and planting your flag, as far as you possibly can, and having everyone excited to be shooting for it. And then you get to do big things. If you just keep it in your head, if you just keep thinking, I'm headed this direction, it's going to work, you're not going to get there. And one of the common things that gets brought up is sometimes you have to go slow to go fast. I think you also sometimes have to slow down to go far. And that means taking a break and getting your team on board. An example of this, and as I've learned this over the years, I've learned it from doing it wrong many times. But for Founders Forge, we are spending, for the second year in a row, almost all of December just doing our strategic planning. We've hired some new people. We're building out a vision for what is our entire year going to look like. And last year, 2 years ago, we did 52 events in a single year. So almost every day of the week, you could go to something that was startup or small business related. We supported 9, 10 other different events. And then this last year, we did most of that, and we held the largest conference for early stage startups in the Southeast in Johnson City. And that was a huge undertaking. But we did all of that. And we can't do all of that if we don't have that plan, the buy-in, bringing the team in, getting them all up to the same speed. That is a big piece. So December, it can be frustrating because we're not doing events. We're not engaging with the community as much as we normally do. But by doing all this and planning out everything for the year and being flexible and adaptable as things change, but by doing that, we're able to accomplish even bigger and greater things. And so I think, if you want to go far, you got to slow down a little bit and spend the time to build the plan. That goes back to doing the strategic plan, looking at your past visions, goals, and setting new ones as a team, not just handing it down to everybody. And then you have that opportunity to do things you never really thought were possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, do you have anything else to share before we wrap up?
No, I think it's for everybody that has a business or even is thinking about doing one. The other thing I see all the time is that sometimes people don't ever let the greatest ideas get off the back of the napkin, or they don't get out of the shower and try the idea because they don't know where to start or what to do. And so reaching out to people that are out there to support entrepreneurs is a great way to do that. Victor, you're a great resource to talk about even outside of just hiring, but you understand what it takes to do business. And there's entrepreneur centers and programs like Founders Forge out there all around. And if you have an idea or you want to grow your business, build a community and take it farther. It builds such a more vibrant community, city, opportunity for people. And small business and startups are really, to me, the future of our country and the entire world. So I really encourage everyone to get out and do big things. Yeah.
Well, if you guys are interested in learning more about David or Founders Forge and all the exciting things that they are going to be doing in 2024, somewhere around this video, we will have all his links listed, so you can check him out. But I just wanted to thank you again, David, for being with us today. And appreciate your time.
No, thank you for having me. Such a cool series that you're doing. And as always, it's just awesome talking with you.